Timothy Leary was a brilliant Harvard psychologist who became a very well-known, controversial figure in 1960s and 70s America. He remained a brilliant thinker and a very charismatic figure until his death. Back in 1957, before all of his troubles, he developed the Leary Interpersonal Circumplex and Checklist. This work offers a map of interpersonal traits within a geometric circle. It provides a scale of healthy and unhealthy expressions of each trait based on a system of 8. Around 1968, Leary was jailed, escaped, jailed again, and eventually placed in solitary confinement. After these trying experiences, he was never quite the same. By the 1970s, Leary was pretty much discredited by the mainstream, but still, he was an incredibly influential figure for alternative thinkers. He introduced the 8-circuit model in fringe books like Neurologic and Exopsychology. He, like many at the time, was obsessed with the coming age of the personal computer. He used computer hardware metaphors, referring to the brain and the nervous system as circuitry. In the 8-circuit model, the human nervous system can be understood as operating in 8 distinct circuit systems. 7 are located within the body, and 1 outside of the body. Each of these circuits is responsible for how the human nervous system engages with a specific aspect of reality. Each circuit can be programmed in a certain way which influences our view of the world and how we interact with it. Robert Anton Wilson, a counterculture thinker, said that the 8-circuit model was the most complete map of reality that he'd ever encountered. This after decades of searching for metaphysical answers. Wilson expanded and modified the 8-circuit model in his book Prometheus Rising. Both men saw the 8-circuit model as an opportunity to reprogram the human nervous system in order to experience the universe in different ways. Wilson concluded there is no objective universe, only individual perspectives on it. He often called each person's view of the world a reality tunnel. Leary argued that programming each of the 8 circuits alters the physical, biological structure of the human body through RNA messenger molecules, or something like that. That was a major paraphrase. Basically, the idea is we're not stuck with our primate DNA genetic programming, and we're not stuck with the educational programming we received from the environment around us as we grew up, like formal education, cultural or religious attitudes. The idea is we can reprogram the human nervous system via 8 circuits and allow it to express itself in a healthier, more natural fashion. The way Leary saw it, most of us live mostly operating in the lower circuits, 1 through 4, with little understanding and infrequent engagement with the higher circuits. This is an unhealthy way of living that leads to personal misery and all the terrible outcomes one sees every day in the news. Leary worked closely with his former Harvard colleague Richard Alpert, later called Ram Dass. Both men like to use the metaphor of changing a TV channel. One can change the channel from the current terrible program we're watching to better programs that can be accessed in the higher circuits. I'll be using this metaphor throughout the talk. You might say I'll be overusing this metaphor. I want to be clear that most of Leary's ideas, the 8-circuit model, is now mostly considered to be a combination of pseudoscience and drug-fueled metaphysical ideas. So I think it's best to see the 8-circuit model as a metaphor. It's true that this talk references some hard-proven science, but if you dissect the human body, you won't find a circuit in the body. From my perspective, the 8-circuit metaphor is immensely useful to navigating everyday reality. I see it as a practical tool. It also helps us understand esoteric and mystical experiences that human beings have had throughout the ages. I think this is partly due to Leary's source of inspiration. Leary's legacy is intertwined with the use of hallucinogenic drugs called psychedelics. We'll be diving into that subject later in the talk. He and many of the alternative thinkers of the time explored the connection between psychedelic experiences and ancient Eastern religious traditions. They were convinced that these traditions could provide a map to the hallucinations one experiences under the influence of psychedelics, and an explanation for the self-reported positive personality changes that often follow these powerful experiences. Leary thought that the chakra system in some Hindu and Buddhist traditions was such a map. Chakra is a Sanskrit word meaning circle, disc, wheel, or circuit. This concept goes back thousands of years, but to Westerners it's mostly encountered in New Age, spiritual seeking contexts. There have been many chakra systems throughout history. Most involve 6 to 7 primary energy centers in the body. Occasionally you'll see references to an 8th energy center outside or above the body. Some systems have over 100 smaller energy centers distributed throughout the body. It's commonly said that the primary energy centers rise up through the body via an energetic column along the spinal cord, from its base to the top of the head. There's a lot of conjecture that this was a primitive science and it was referencing neurology and endocrinology, but frankly speaking, there's a lot of nonsense said about chakras. Instead, it's better to understand that chakra systems are a metaphorical framework. They help us understand the process of transforming a mundane, worldly life into a sacred one. The chakra system traditionally has served as an aid for meditation, worship, and union with the divine. It also can serve as a practical aid for self-improvement. One notable chakra methodology that I'd like to mention can be found in Shaktism, the Hindu goddess worship tradition I mentioned earlier. In this tradition, you find popular terms like Tantra, Kundalini, which is a life force energy that goes up the spine, and you'll find other terms like Yantra and Mudras that you may have heard of in yoga class. The 8th Circuit model has mostly been forgotten after Leary and Wilson died. Interestingly, a core concept behind much of Leary's work is now all the rage in neuroscience. Neuroplasticity is the ability for the brain and nervous system to rapidly change and adapt. This is now accepted science and can be found in any mainstream publication, TED Talk, or scientific podcast these days. It seems to me that the essence of Leary and Wilson's work on the 8th Circuit model is the reduction of suffering, both individual and societal suffering on the whole. Their work was a service to others, providing people with a user manual for the nervous system. Leary wanted people to be able to reprogram their nervous system so that it expresses itself in a more natural and healthy manner. The 8th Circuit model taught readers that they can tune into the body's nervous system like one tunes a musical instrument. And doing so creates a more harmonious life experience.